And joining us now is the friendly atheist, Hemant Mehta. How are you today?
I'm excellent. How are you, gentlemen?
Just fabulous.
Wonderful.
Steve?
I am doing outstanding, thank you.
So many of you probably know him from YouTube and his blog on Patheos. Very well known. He's an atheist household name, so to speak. And we are so thrilled to have him with us. I kind of want to go back in the past to start out with and take us back to your childhood. And Did you grow up in a religious household? What kind of structure was that?
Yeah, so I grew up in a religion called Jainism. It's a lesser known Indian religion that mostly preaches nonviolence more than anything else. So we're like hardcore vegetarians. You're not even supposed to have bad thoughts. And like, that's a nice philosophy. It's a good way to live your life. The problem is they also believe in heaven and hell and reincarnation. And when I was like 14 years old, I started questioning those things for the first time. Never knew you could question those things. And, you know, when you start exploring all that stuff, you realize it doesn't have any evidence. And I realized pretty quickly that the problem wasn't my religion. The problem was religion in general. And so I quickly became an atheist after that.
So I kind of want to stay in the Jainism aspect for just a second, because it's something that I think is unique and not a lot of people, I think, know about it. How is it separate from Christianity? Like, does it differ very much?
Well, the idea is that you get reincarnated and your goal in life, so to speak, is to do good things and basically shed all the bad karma you've accumulated in a lifetime. And if you eventually do that, you actually become a deity of sorts. Jains don't actually believe in like a creator god, so it's not like a god, but you can become a supernatural deity. And they were like, we know the names of the 24 people who have done that. It's interesting. I remember memorizing that list as a kid. And so, I mean, it has its weirdness. It has its supernatural elements to it. But I mean, in general, it's just another religion with its own set of beliefs, and it urges you to be good. I mean, I'd say that's pretty similar to most religions in general. It just has a different flavor, different specifics, things like that.
Why do you think it is that, as different as each religion is, there seems to be a constant theme, and that is the punishment for not believing? In all of them, there's a hell aspect to it. Why do you think that's...
Yeah, they all just want you to join their particular club, you know? It's a way of getting power for yourself. Can't convince you with the good stuff, let's scare you with the bad stuff. And it's another way to keep their hold on you. And that's why I think it's pretty courageous when people, whatever religious background they're coming from, when they decide to abandon it and they decide, you know what, I don't believe in this stuff, that's a big deal. I mean, harder for some people than others, but that's never easy to do.
I think nowadays it's probably a lot easier than it was when you actually made your crossover. Would you say that's accurate?
Yeah, in large part. I mean, I didn't have a rough time of it compared to other people I know, but there weren't a lot of resources available. Right. So, like, when I'm looking this stuff up, we're talking, oh, let me find the website where someone has or someone has written about this. I wasn't about to
AOL in the background.
Yeah. I have to wait till the parents are like sleeping, so no one's using the dial-up, you know, on the phone. But now there's so many resources. I mean, you could talk anonymously through Reddit, or you could read blogs or YouTube videos, or you can get so many books about atheism that not just that'll help you confirm your atheism, but like if you're on the fence, it'll give you the good arguments you need for it. So I'm jealous of all the resources people have now, but I think it's still hard to take that leap for yourself. So that part is still difficult.
Absolutely. I am from North Carolina, which is in the middle of the Bible Belt. I grew up as an independent Baptist, which is right of Southern Baptist, if you can imagine that. So I still think that today, at least, especially down here, the resources still aren't as kind of widespread, just because there's such a cultural lock here to everything centers around church. Literally, in the radius of where I am right now, there are probably 12 churches within 10 miles of a radius.
Oh my God. Not
it's
surprising.
Interesting because what they're doing now is they're like 4 Methodist churches I know, and the attendance is so low at each one of those churches that they literally switch each Sunday and go to church. So everybody from those congregations form together, and they're now just bouncing around from church to church around this area. But that's the lock. They're not letting go of it.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, it's not surprising at all. It's the sort of place, it sounds like, where, you know, when you meet someone new, the first question is like, "Oh, where do you go to church?" And you know, I got lucky that I lived in Tennessee for a little bit. I managed to avoid a lot of those questions just because I'm brown, and so they just assume I go somewhere else. And I mean, my atheism wasn't fully formed at the time either, but I didn't realize until much later how much of an anomaly I was, and how much I avoided when I was there.
Yeah, probably the main thing that people worry about is the reaction they're going to get from their friends and family.
Yeah.
How did yours take it?
I just didn't tell my parents for the longest time. Now they know. I mean, they've known for a long time now because it's such a big part of what I do. But even now, we don't really talk about it, and I'm pretty sure they'd be thrilled if I stopped blogging and doing all that stuff immediately. But I mean, it's fine. We have a good relationship, and so my family is fine with it. My friends, for the most part, I never really made it a big deal in our relationships. It was tangential to it. If it came up, it came up. But, like, I don't know, none of my friendships were based on religion or a shared belief in that sense. I mean, I just grew up in a pretty diverse area, too. So, whatever, people believed in a lot of different things. And we just never fought about it. We might have talked about it, but we never really argued. And so if anyone left, it's not because we had a fight and blew up over it. Maybe we just faded away when we began to have other options and friends. But again, I realize I'm lucky in that sense that my social network is not tied up in a church, so that when I stopped being religious, I lost everything. There are some people who come from that background, and that's hard. I didn't have that. I was lucky that I kind of knew a lot of people through family networks and friends I made, and it wasn't about religion, but it was about shared interests and things like that.
So true to your name, you seem like one of the friendliest guys on the planet. You're very laid. Well, even here, you're very laid back, and even about the religion aspect, like it doesn't affect your friendships and stuff like that. So what was it that made you actually take a step into activism? Because usually it's a drive to want to rage against religion.
I think that's accurate. I think a lot of people get into it because they want to rage against religion. And I think I do come from it from another side, which is that I wanted to be pro-atheism. So when I entered college, I was so eager to meet other atheists. And I ended up starting a group with a friend of mine in college. That led to working with a group called the Secular Student Alliance, which is still going strong today. And they kind of like form a network of atheist groups across the country. And I got involved at an organizational level. So I was very much involved with trying to help atheists find community and form these groups on college campuses. And through the SSA, I met a lot of other atheist groups. And, I'm yada-yadaing my way through this, but it took a while before I actually started a website and started doing all this stuff that I'm doing now. Now I'm much more angry about a lot of this stuff, but I wasn't so much speaking out against religion back then, so much as just trying to help other atheists travel the path that I had been able to walk down, because I knew they needed resources, and I wanted to help create those resources.
So what you're saying is eventually we're going to see the angry atheist or the unfriendly atheist.
Totally.
I think there's already one of those out there, actually, quite a few.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah,
probably.
More than one.
But yeah, I mean, again, I'm coming from a place where religion wasn't such a bad thing in my life. I didn't experience much religious bigotry in any sort of way. And when I became an atheist, it was more of a, wow, this is so neat. Everything makes sense in the light of atheism. I mean, I don't think I learned about the science, like evolution stuff until way later, or at least understood it better until way later. So it was always like a positive epiphany. And it was never a, wow, I'm so repressed and I have no idea. I had no idea how bad I had it. That was never really the case. So, yeah, I don't feel like I have a lot of religious baggage.
That's good. That's a good thing. One of the things that I found most interesting, and all day long I have been waiting to ask you this question.
Yeah.
When researching kind of your background before this interview, you sold your soul on eBay.
Yeah. So the story
That's
behind
awesome.
that, the story behind that is that, so I was working with the Secular Student Alliance. I'm working with these atheist groups. And like we're talking about, I came from religion wasn't a horrible thing in my life. I'm surrounded by a lot of people who became atheists coming from a background like yours that was very religious. And so they had legitimate axes to grind. But it's like, you know what? I've never actually been to a church because it wasn't even my upbringing. And everything I hear about church comes from, TV, movies, or from these people I'm surrounded by. All these people I'm surrounded by who really didn't like their churches. And I kind of wanted to know, what is it like to attend some of these churches? But I want to ask questions about it. So I ended up putting this thing on eBay that said you could bid on where I go to church and I'll document it. I thought that was a clever way to kind of do that.
It was.
And a pastor ended up saying, all right, I'm buying you. And that's the selling my soul. I didn't actually sell my soul. But he said, I will pay for you. I'll buy you. He won the auction. He said, why don't you go to 10 churches around Chicago, where I'm from? He gets to pick which ones they are because he knew the difference between Baptist and fundamental Baptist and non-denominational megachurch and a black church. I didn't know any of the distinctions. So he said, let me pick them for you. You go. And in return, I said I would keep a blog or a diary or something. He said, in return, write about your experiences honestly on my ministry's website and we'll call it a deal. Wow. And I was totally fine with that. He was awesome to work with. And so I ended up doing that. And I had a chance to even write a book about that experience. And I visited even more churches for that one, called I Sold My Soul on eBay, because that's what all the headlines were when people were writing about it. But it was it was a neat thing to be able to see this stuff firsthand. I mean, at the time I visited Ted Haggard's church, and he was like the powerful evangelical pastor at the time, later brought down in scandal. I went to Joel Osteen's megachurch in Texas, which is still going on. I mean, they're so wealthy they bought out the Houston Rockets basketball arena.
Right.
And I visited some smaller ones and more fire brimstone-y kind of churches. And
Pentecostal?
I don't believe I went to a Pentecostal church.
What?
I did. We didn't run the gamut. There wasn't enough time.
So
to do
no
that.
Mormon, no Jehovah's Witness, no Seventh-day Advent.
No, and the reason is for the pastor. He wanted me to see evangelical churches. Yeah. The spectrum of evangelicalism, and for the book, I was writing for an evangelical audience.
How about Mennonites?
Yeah.
Would Mennonite have count?
I don't know, but I never went there. You know what? The book publisher actually said, we want you to go to churches that reflect people who are actually going to read the book. And so they sent me specifically to like a lot of mega churches and a lot of smaller regional churches that no one else knows about, but it's typical. It was a good thing to see firsthand because I will say that a number of these places, if you take away the preaching, the supernatural stuff in the preaching, they seem like really wonderful places. A lot of them were doing volunteer work and, they were making a difference beyond their walls. And it's like, that's all good stuff. Like, I can totally understand why, if I believed any of this stuff, I would totally want to go to this church. I can't because I don't buy into any of this. But, like, they were good places, a lot of them. So, it makes it a little harder for me to say, go read The God Delusion, for example, and you're totally going to become an atheist because it's not that simple. You have to not just convince people with logic and reason. You have to say, look, if you leave your church, I have to find a replacement social network for you. I have to find people who are going to care for you if you're sick or if your kids are in danger or something. And how do you replace their social network? How do you replace all the bonds that they currently have Like an argument about like the ultimate 747 is fine, but like I think there are way more people who attend these churches who don't believe in God, but they're not about to leave because they don't have any replacements or they don't know how to. Yeah, you know. So seeing that firsthand as opposed to just hearing about it secondhand, I mean, I think that helped a lot in terms of all the stuff I'm doing now, because I know that if I'm criticizing a church or I'm criticizing a pastor, it is important to recognize that in the back of my head, I'm guessing a lot of the people at these churches are good people trying to do good things. They may very well disagree with a lot of what the pastor says, even if they're supporting it through their money and things like that. But, I mean, I think that's important to recognize. And it also makes sure that when I'm criticizing people or I'm criticizing their beliefs, I'm pinpointing exactly what I'm talking about, or at least I try to, as opposed to saying, here's why Christians are bigots. Like, no, there's a lot of Christians who are not bigots, and they're actively working on the side of like civil rights and for LGBTQ people and for women trying to access abortions. They're awesome about that stuff. And I don't want to lump them in with everybody else. Same thing, like, don't say evangelicals support Trump. Black evangelicals don't, and 20% of white evangelicals really don't. So it's like, you know, it helps to keep all that stuff in mind, that the spectrum of Christianity, even if you look at evangelicals, for instance, is pretty broad. And it's so easy for atheists to lump them all together, just like they're so quick to say we're immoral or we're bad people or something like that.
Eat babies.
Yeah, we eat babies. I mean, some of us do, but not everybody.
Only with barbecue sauce.
Right. I mean, you've got to have some flavor. So you have to recognize that, because otherwise you're taking cheap shots, and that doesn't help.
I think that's very well said. Did you ever find yourself when you were at those churches, kind of caught up in the moment, or feeling like, you know, there was maybe something more to it? Did that ever, you know, kind of cross your mind?
Never once. But I did witness. I witnessed other people, I think, who were in that moment. And I definitely listened to those sermons. And because some of those churches, especially the non-denominational ones, are very good at not being fire brimstone-y and not being overtly preachy. Maybe that's weird to say, in how they deliver those sermons. They're very much telling a story. I'll give you the Joel Osteen one, for example. He's very good at telling you how to live a better life without being heavy-handed with the Bible. And I could see how that appeals to a lot of people looking for that sort of thing. And some of the stories that they were, I think I remember going to a church where there was a guy who had just come out of prison. And obviously faith helped him through his rough times. But it's like, wow, this guy was helped by Christians to, if I have this right, I could be wrong. But like once he got out, he had a pathway to finding success in the outside world again, because he had this help from Christians. It's like, how do you not get caught up in a story like that? That's amazing. There was a church in Michigan that was trying to fix the poverty issue in their community. It's like, it's almost like hearing a really good TED Talk or something. You get wrapped up in it. And it's like, I want to help. I want to be a part of this. Nothing that made me reconsider my atheism, but it's like, this is very compelling. Like, these people are not bad people.
Sure. We had a she calls herself the Irreverent Reverend. She is Steve, how would you describe what
she's a spiritualist type person. She believes
spirit.
Yeah, she believes that there's a universal type conscience that's out there. She doesn't necessarily believe in a deity, like no specific deities of any kind, but does believe things like an afterlife, I would assume, and that there's a universal consciousness that we can all tap into and be part of.
Right.
It's religious spiritualism.
Right.
But the interesting thing about the conversation that we had, and where I found her, they had a feminist, not feminist, sorry, that's a wrong word to use, a pro-feminism kind of conference in South Africa. And she got up on this stage. Now, these are women who are from all different types of faiths, but that was a central point to this, was faith in God. So she gets up there, and proceeds to tell the audience that her belief is that God has divinely inspired sex, so she's very strong on the sex aspect. She then proceeds to say that the Virgin Mary was not a virgin. We should get rid of that notion in our head. Just all of these things that are true, but you wouldn't say at a conference like this. And the people there were eating it up. I mean, you would think that in that central, localization of religious people, that somebody would go, wait a minute, she's totally
heretical or something.
But I think at a certain level, people today now kind of feel that it isn't true, but they, like you were saying, they go along with it because it's what they know, it's what they've always known. And that's a perfect example of what you were saying, because she was able to say those things in a coliseum full of religious women and not get taken out of there by force.
Yeah, I think there are a lot of Christians who think, I want to believe this stuff. It makes me feel better about myself. It gives me hope when I'm depressed. But there are aspects of the faith that are disturbing, or it could be. And if there's a way to reconcile like this, but I also support gay people. So is there a way for me to be a Christian and still do that? And there are people who will say, yes, there is. And here's the way you twist the scriptures to make it work. And people who say, but I accept evolution. And that's fine too. There are religious people who find a way to believe in the Bible and accept evolution. And to me, that seems very cookie cutter-y. Like, you just take what you like, and who cares whether it makes any sense. I'll be honest with you, I am less... I pay less attention to that. I don't care about it as much. My focus is way more now on how do the people try to push their religion through the government? How do people hurt other people with their religion, as opposed to how do they twist religion to make it seem more acceptable to other people? Because if you're like a progressive Christian, I probably agree with you on all these social issues, and we probably have a ton of agreement on politics and all that. But I think you're wrong about all that Jesus stuff and prayer and all that stuff. But you're not bothering me. You're not a priority. I'm not going to have arguments with you to try to convert you, at least not on purpose. Maybe it comes up or something, but I don't care. There are people who are doing a lot of damage with their religious beliefs, and I try to focus on that. So, yeah, to me, the lady you're talking about, it sounds like, yeah, of course she could get people worked up. They're looking for a way for their religion to be a force for good, and it sounds like she was using it as a force for good, even if we might argue it's not logically, it doesn't make sense with what her religion teaches. But whatever, I'd much rather that happen than what I'm seeing in the U.S., and
sure.
So whatever. Those people are not on my radar. That's why I really don't have a problem with, interfaith work. It's like, look, if people want to use their religious beliefs to work together with people of other religions for a common cause, good, fine. I hope atheists join that effort.
I agree.
And I hope the interfaith community welcomes us. And by and large, they really have in the past several years. That's fine. I don't have a problem with that, because there are other bigger problems to deal with.
So on the scale of religiosity, I happen to agree with you fully on that. I think that you have to pick your battles, and there's only so much time to go around. And I'd much rather deal with somebody who's trying to introduce creationism into our school system than, like you said, some kind of interfaith, let's help the poor kind of stuff. Fine. I'm all for that kind of stuff. And I have personally, there's my own personal ideas on this, but I don't think there's an issue with atheists and theists working together for humanitarian efforts. I don't see an issue with that. And most atheists I know don't see an issue with that. If anybody has an issue with that, I have seen some theists have issues with that, which doesn't make much sense to me, but that is what I see more often. But I agree with you wholeheartedly that I am not an anti-theist. I don't know too many people that are. I think it's a position where you have to put forth a lot of effort to try to say, look, we're going to eliminate religion everywhere or in your area. That's a difficult hill to overcome. But if you say, look, I am going to keep separation of church and state, I'm going to keep secularism, and I'm going to vote people in that want to keep those separation of church and states and to promote actual science, that's a lot easier goal to accomplish. And if theists of any kind want to help me in that goal, if they're anti-young earth creationist or anti-flat earth, I'm on board with them. Is that okay?
When it comes to working toward those progressive goals, yes, absolutely. And in fact, I've seen a lot of there are atheist lobbyist groups in Washington, D.C. now, a lot of national groups that push forward policy issues. They always work with religious groups to advance those issues because no one's going to listen to just us.
I think that's wise.
Yeah, it absolutely is wise because I think it also has more force when you're saying, look, we disagree about one of the most fundamental questions people have in life, but on this issue, we're all united, and we're asking members of Congress to do this too. I don't know how effective it is today, but in other administrations, that has some weight.
Yeah, it's a shame that one litmus thing separates people, right? Because obviously there's...
And when your goal.
Yeah, exactly. Not when you have an end goal in mind. If your end goal, which I believe is far more important, and I agree. I mean, we cannot teach things like creationism or flat Earth or stuff like that in school. It just makes no sense whatsoever. There is no teach the controversy. And I have a daughter, so I have a vested interest in this. I do not want her to waste her time with alternative theories because those are not real things. They're just basically pseudoscience. So I do believe that if you can get a group of people, and some of them are atheists, some are theists, some of them whatever, but they all want the same goal. Let's say, for example, theistic evolutionists. I have no problem with. Personally, hey, it's great, fine. My work is done at that point. I think Kyle might say, okay, well, I'd rather them actually be an atheist, whatever. I couldn't care less.
I had a different bone to pick, though. I mean, because growing up as not only in this region, but also as someone who is gay, I had it every Sunday almost. The Firestone and the
Fire and Brimstone stuff.
Yeah. The abomination and the unnatural, and those words, when you have to wake up every day and become somebody that you're not, when you have to put on a mask and go through every single day, not who you really are as an individual, but just because there are a group of fanatics that believe that you are not made right, or that you are different, or that you are not okay. It leaves a lasting scar. It was 25 years where I was able to actually be me and feel that weight not on my shoulders. So that's a hard pill to swallow when you take a step back and you see that there are people that are affecting other people's lives in a way that I don't think understand the scale of the impact that they're having. And I think that it's for something that is just not true and everybody placates it. It's a hard pill for me to swallow. Now, do I agree that we need to work together? Yes, I think that will make it easier on everybody, ultimately. But, I mean, you won't have me at the end of these humanitarian efforts singing Kumbaya with...
But not all religions are like that, though. I mean, if you want to work with a person that is of faith, that is against homophobia, is against, fighting against gay marriage, is all for equal rights, I don't take issue with that. Because I don't want to lump all people together. And it's only the extreme evangelists that I see, having those types of really extreme positions. Most people I know that adhere to some type of religious beliefs or Christianity don't care one way or another, or just fine with it. They're just not advocating against it. Now, I agree. The extremists, the hardcore evangelists that are preaching against this kind of stuff, again, I mean, if somebody wants to be on the fight with me against that kind of stuff, I'm going to take them on board personally. But I do see your concern, obviously.
How do you feel that, or in your experience? Let's take that particular issue. What are some of the things or some of the steps that they're taking to kind of change that stereotype that you have that all of them think that way?
Which are you talking about, progressive Christians and stuff?
Yeah, like the ones that you work with. What are they doing as far as trying to change that whole stereotype?
A couple of things. I mean, other bloggers I work with who are progressive Christians, they're very much on the front lines of calling out their own evangelical colleagues for their support of Trump, for their total looking the other way, and they're willing to call out the hypocrisy for what it is. It's not just us doing things like that. On a broader scale, I don't work with them, but I know what they're doing. There's a religious response to the religious right. I mean, there is a religious left that is growing, and they fight for, unions and teachers and taking the moral high ground. We talk about the moral majority and we compare it to the religious right because that's like what it was built from. But really the moral side is not their side anymore. It's on the other side. And there are Christians trying to take that back and saying, you know, we're the ones fighting for morality, and that means treating people as equals and making sure they're not discriminated against. And so they're fighting for that. Now, how effective are they?
Minimal.
They're somewhat effective in like Virginia as a state. I hope they get bigger, because if there needs to be a religious voice to really rally Democrats, and there are plenty of Democrats on religious people on the Democratic side, it'll come from them. And so I hope they can take leadership, especially like heading into the 2018 midterm elections.
How great is it, in your opinion? We don't usually delve too much into politics, but when I can see the opportunity, I can't help it. What's your take on how do I phrase this? The epitome of everything that the Bible is against is in office right now. So, yeah. But they're able to brush that off and, it's no. You know, everybody makes mistakes. If it was Obama, it would be the end of the world. You know, the world would be ending. He'd be impeached. So, from your take, what goes through their mind to try to justify that?
Oh, I think the justification is Donald Trump pays us lip service. He treats us like we are being persecuted, which is how they see themselves. So they like that. And the other thing is he's giving them what they always wanted, which is conservative judges recommended by their people. He's just reading off of their list saying, who do you want as Supreme Court justice? Who do you want on the appellate courts? I will nominate those people. As long as he doesn't stray from that, he's going to continue having their support. Now, what's weird to me is it seems like a very short-term gain, but a huge long-term loss for them. Because, you know, I used to think during the George W. Bush time and even the Obama era that evangelical backlash, their rejection of marriage equality was just the dumbest policy move they could have made, because it's like the easiest moral question of our time. And we're already seeing this in polling results. How many young people walked away from religion, organized religion, if not God, because in large part they hated the way the church treated gay people, or the way they handled abortion rights, or the way they just aligned with the Republican Party. I mean, they left for so many reasons, but like being against marriage equality and LGBT rights, that was kind of at the top of their list.
That was me.
And they're out,
that was me.
right?
Because one of the biggest factors I had, I was baptized Mormon, and it wasn't until years ago. Do you remember back to when the California had the initiative ballot?
Prop 8.
Prop 8. So the LDS Church is very active in fighting against that, and
it wouldn't have happened unless Mormon Church was actively involved in that.
Yeah, and I took huge issue with that. I couldn't look past it. Now, I also subsequently learned things like the Evergreen Project, where they try to do reparative therapy and convert gays to non-gay, which is a complete scientific bullshit I've ever seen. There's no such evidence to ever support any type of conversion therapy would ever work. As a matter of fact, it leads to more harm, psychological damage, suicide. It's very, very destructive. But I could not get past them involving themselves on such an issue. I think it was the worst mistake they possibly could have made. I know a lot of people that took issue with that, and not just with the LDS Church, but as other churches as well. Like you said, huge backlash.
And so many young people are leaving the church because of all that stuff, just like you did. And now what are they doing? Because now they have this, we celebrate the Obergefell decision from the Supreme Court, and that is a wonderful thing, that marriage equality is now legal. The one downside to that is that gay marriage was no longer a point of debate. It was done. Evangelicals, if they wanted to, white evangelicals could have said, now it's the law of the land. We oppose it, but, the government did it to us, but we're going to move on to other issues. That's what they could have done.
But they didn't.
But they didn't. Now they're latching on to everything Trump.
Yep.
And again, Trump is not, for most people, this is not a reasonable debate. He is unequivocally awful, like as a human being. And yet so many of these evangelicals are clinging to his side. So even when they had a chance to move past the most contentious issue they stood for, they just latched onto another idiotic battle. This is not a battle they can still kind of win, because there's an emotional component to that, like we're saving the babies or whatever. They're latching on to the dumbest possible person you could latch on to.
They're doubling down on it, yeah.
So it's working for them now. They'll get their. Let's hope another Supreme Court justice opening doesn't happen anytime soon. But in the meantime, they're doing plenty of damage. But again, once Trump is out of office, and let's hope there's a Democrat in charge, they will still be stuck with that stench for a long time. And I wonder how many young people are going to leave religion because, again, the easiest moral questions of our time, these Christians are saying, nope, our religion leads us to say everything Trump does is fine. It's not that I heard someone else say it the other day. It's not that all these evangelicals are racist, but clearly Donald Trump's racism doesn't bother them enough.
Yeah, right.
Exactly.
That's the entire just thing that blows my mind. I mean, they're able to just kind of pass off on everything that he does as okay. He had Jim Baker as a guest in the Oval Office. Jim Baker, the guy that sells buckets of food for when the end of the world comes.
The apocalypse,
Also, by the way, installed he has a commode lid that now comes with a bucket so that in case you're out of bathrooms. This is all true. Yeah. That man was in the
those videos.
Yeah, that's a legit thing. No question.
Right. And the point is, like, again, it's so easy to... Evangelicals might say we oppose harassment, we oppose sexual harassment, we stand with women. But when Trump does it, when Trump
Not
has
so
a
much.
scandal with a porn star, has an affair with a porn star right after his baby's born, whatever, we didn't elect the pastor.
Exactly. Like, he has faults, okay.
It's only been a year.
But let me ask you, what would happen if Trump did leave office? Let's say he did impeach and left. Yeah, but think of the ramifications.
And I might believe in a God then.
Well, hang on. Yeah. But then you have Mike Pence.
Right.
So how much more worse would that be?
That would be horrible. Because Pence is all the same beliefs, more or less.
And further crazy, though.
And further crazy, and none of the scandal, which means he really is one of them.
Yeah, he doesn't have the baggage Trump has, but he has 10 times the amount of crazy. Because, I mean, I think tangentially, I think Trump believes whatever, and I don't think he gives one crap one way or another. He'll go whatever way somebody pulls his strings. But Pence, he's a diehard believer in the younger creationism narrative.
His wife mother. I mean, that's
Policy-wise, Pence is going to be way worse than Trump because he's going to take all these conservative positions and, like, we know it in advance and we know he's not going to change on them. He would be really bad for us. I mean, I don't know how old you guys are. Like, I was old enough to be cognizant of politics during the entire Bush era. So, like, I thought that was bad. And Mike Pence would be way worse.
I lived through Carter. How old does that tell you? Okay.
Right. But, like, the point being, like, I think a lot of young people who maybe grew up in the age of Obama, they have no idea what it's like when your president is a conservative Christian and he has the backing of a political party who will do whatever he wants. I've said this in some of my public talks, but, like, before 9/11 happened, the biggest thing I remember people saying about George W. Bush is that he put a stop to stem cell research, or at least he posed a big obstacle to it. That really put a damper on what type of research you could do with it because of his religious convictions. Right. And maybe he would be remembered for that more, if not for what happened a few months later. But, like, it gets really bad when you have a religious conservative who thinks this is what everybody wants him to do. So, yeah, Pence would be worse. I'm not hoping that Trump leaves and Pence takes over. I want them both to be gone.
Yeah, at the same time, right? Coextensively gone.
When the biggest scandal was George W. Bush putting an end to stem cell research. I would give anything for that.
That would
be on the back cover of the newspaper today. That's what's going to hurt us in the long run, I think, is because we are now being conditioned in an age where you want drama every single day. Every single day there's a new news story. The president that follows Trump, I think, is going to be a really big kind of chasm because the news is eating this up. I mean, every day it's just Trump. So I think we're in bad shape in a lot more ways than just what he's doing now.
I got to tell you, I was not a huge Obama fan. As most people know, I'm a fiscal conservative, but socially liberal. But I'll tell you, I'd rather have 100 Obamas than one Trump at this point.
Right.
I mean, let's be realistic.
I've heard a lot of Republicans who are anti-Trump say something very similar too. Like, you know where he stood, you know what sort of conversations he was going to have, you knew you would disagree with him, but you weren't gonna. He wasn't disrespectful to the office.
He was a statesman, and he had convictions. You didn't agree with them. He could articulate his positions. He knew what was going on. He didn't have to be explained briefings as if you were like a child. So yeah, I mean, I'd rather have that somebody in office that I don't fully agree with their policies, but I respect as a statesperson, somebody as a leader. I don't see any of those qualities in Trump at all.
And
like
I think
zero.
Also, Obama, more than anything else, was always trying to do what's right, whether or not he succeeded in that. I don't even know that I could say the same thing for Mike Pence, who I think has no problem discriminating against different groups of people if it means evangelicals get a leg up. That worries me. But yeah, you're right. I mean, opposed to Trump, compared to Trump, though, who doesn't care about anybody, that's a big difference. And so, yeah, there's part of me that's like, yeah, it would be nice to go back to a normal president of either party. But at the same time, like, what we have right now, the options right now, are not good for another couple of years. So that's disturbing.
I wanted Al Franken. I was heartbroken when...
I know. Me too, man.
That cut me deep, because I grew up on Saturday Night Live. I mean, that's my show. And he was actually making momentum. And it's like... For some reason, there's this double standard that continues through both parties, and Al Franken was kind of forced, put up there and crucified in front of everybody, had to resign and all that stuff. But then you had in Alabama a disgusting pedophile that was running for Senate. I can't even remember his name, but
Roy Moore.
Yeah,
Roy Moore.
Was it Judge Roy Moore or something?
Yeah, used to be.
He used to be judge. Yeah.
And now he's posting. Have you seen his? I keep up with his posts just because it's comical. But he's actually the other day he put something out that says something like, "I'm in desperate need of anyone that supports me funds."
He's bankrupt. He claims, and he wants fiscal support. Yeah,
it's just cringe. It's just cringeworthy, and that's okay. Like, that's fine. But Al Franken, because he didn't do anything to the level that Roy Moore did, is what I'm saying. No. But yet he was still allowed to run.
And it's frustrating, and believe me, I've had that whole run of feelings with him too. I don't mind that he steps down, but like, it's frustrating that Republicans don't hold any of their people to the same accountability. At the same time, I'm not as worried that Al Franken's not around, because there are other Democrats I have no problem getting behind if they were to run, and I'd be very happy if they won. But again, that's such a long way out still. So it's like, when that happens, I've no doubt there'll be some fine candidate who emerges who I agree with more often than not. In the meantime, it's at least endearing a little bit to see how much opposition there is from so many people to everything that's happening, which again is why I really don't understand why conservative Christians are so eager to latch on to the sinking ship right now, when, again, it's such a simple thing to say, like, everything Trump is doing is batshit crazy, and we're not going to support it. No, they're like, he's fine, don't worry about it, not a big deal, as long as he gives us the judges. Let him sink, as long as he gives us our judges, we'll sign off on anything he wants.
Pretty much.
There's nothing he could do that would get them to, like, change their mind, unless he appoints someone who's, like, pro-choice, and then they would turn their backs on him in an instant.
I would love... there's a part of me that thinks that this is just some kind of thing that he set up a long time ago, that what he's doing is shaking the system, and I don't think that he planned on winning. Like, I don't think that...
Initially.
He had any intention of wanting to be president, because the picture of them when they found out they won, it looks like they're at a funeral.
Right.
So he's like, what the hell did I get myself into?
Yeah.
Right. I think he ran as a troll. I think he ran as a publicity stunt. And winning was really the worst thing that could have happened to everybody, including him. And we're seeing the effect of that now. And again, this is... I have more contempt for liberals who are like, I'm not going to vote for Hillary Clinton because...
Right.
I don't love her.
Yes, thank you.
And... or conservatives who are like, I can't vote for Hillary, so I'm either going to sit out or I'm going to vote for the Republican because every Republican's in Congress or whatever. Like, at least I get that. But the ones who just were apathetic, didn't voted for a third party because she wasn't like, no candidate's going to be perfect. But like, by and large, she would have been fine.
Yes, the people that piss me off are the ones that go and write in a name. Like, you actually take the time to go to the booth and you write in a name that's not even going to come anywhere close to...
Like Harambe?
I think that's just...
Like Harambe. Yeah, like, I'm sure it's funny for like a second. It's less funny when for the next 4 years...
Harambe got thousands of votes.
Who are minorities or women or, you know, certain groups, their lives are in danger because you voted for Harambe or whatever.
Right.
And again, when it comes down to it, you could say this came down to what, like a few tens of thousands of votes in a couple of few states. Like, anything could have tipped the scale in the other direction. And believe me, I've heard all the arguments about, well, Hillary should have done better. She should have campaigned better. Sure. But again, when your internal polling says everything is fine, you're trying to just keep it steady. And there's way too many people who acted stupid because I don't know why. I don't know. Again, all of us were around in 2000 when the Al Gore stuff happened. All of us have been around like other elections that were ridiculously close. And it's like, this isn't a time to play around. What are you doing? I actually understand atheists who vote Republican in a general, like for George W. Bush or Mitt Romney. I get that.
Sure.
I think it's stupid, but I get that.
Sure.
But really, like, again, with Pence in the wings and Trump who doesn't have these convictions, like, there's nothing that's going to be good if you are an atheist who at least cares mildly about church-state separation or certain issues. I don't think atheists are progressive about everything, but, like, incompetence and a religious nut, like, what in there is that for you? And yet they were totally willing to do it. And it wasn't like two people. These were a number of atheists. Like,
I'll tell you why.
Yeah, why?
I'll tell you why. There's a group of people that want to see the world burn.
Mm-hmm.
They want to see what will happen with a Trump presidency. I mean, anybody in general, I think, even though you could never actually make the vote, you still wondered in your mind, what would this be like? You know, what would a Trump as a president?
They clearly don't care about all the people who are going to be in danger of this. And again, that's when the trolling and the joke and the burn the world, everything, it stops being funny because of your ignorance or because you wanted to have a joke or something. A lot of people are hurt and our country's screwed over for decades to come. I don't know. I don't see the humor in it.
Do you think the DNC made a mistake by not choosing Bernie?
Yes.
So I've only really seen one thing that said they threw him under the bus, which was like one email from one staffer who kind of said, like, should we expose Bernie's atheism or something like that? Let me answer this two ways. That's one of them. And basically, the response from the DNC was, we're not going to do that. And that wasn't implemented. So one staffer said something, made a stupid suggestion. No one followed it. That's one thing. One, that didn't bother me because I don't think Bernie was going to win. I don't think he was going to do better than Hillary was. I think he inspired a lot of passion from a lot of Democrats, but I don't think he was going to win over more people than she was. Whatever. I voted for him in the primary, so I like him, but I don't know that he was like a better thing. I think the DNC should stay out of the primary stuff. Like they got involved in a Texas House of Representatives race too. Stay out of it. Let people have their candidate, then support the Democratic candidate, unless there's a really good reason not to. I didn't see that evidence, and I would have been fine with either candidate. But I honestly haven't seen any good reason to think he just didn't get enough votes, and she beat him fair and square in many places over.
You don't think he would have done better against Trump in the general election?
No, for two reasons. One is he never got really hammered by opposition forces. I'm just pointing out one thing. Like, he wrote romance novels way back when. No one really mined those as proof of anything. It was like a little quirk in his biography. But the amount of crap the Trump people would have put on him, they would been relentless on him for some stupid reason, just like they did with Hillary. She had more to choose from, but I think they would have done that. The other thing is, again, I think he really inspires a base of Democrats. I don't know that he inspires like way more than Hillary does in general. He would have done significantly better than she would have in all the states. I think he would have just gotten a lot of people more worked up. But you don't need like a handful of really passionate people in an election. You need a whole bunch of people who are like, yeah, all right, that's fine. You know what I mean? Like,
well said. So we will now shift from the the political atheist back to the friendly atheist.
Sure.
Didn't mean to get off on a tangent there, but I think that was a really good conversation. This happens to me in each interview. I have a list of questions, and
I know it just goes out the window as soon as you
right. So tell us what you're involved in now, kind of any events that you have coming up, what you're doing, where people can connect with you, and then I'll ask you the question that I ask everyone else.
Sure. So the biggest thing is I blog at friendlyatheist.com. That is kind of my full-time thing, which is writing about atheism in the news and wherever I think atheists might be interested in. I also have a podcast at friendlyatheistpodcast.com. That's the name of it because I'm not original. There is also the Atheist Voice channel on YouTube. I haven't made videos in a while for reasons that have nothing to do with anything, but they'll resume soon enough. But those videos are, I think what I like about it is all three of those things tend to reach a very different audience every time. And so it's a lot less double dipping than you would think. It reaches a different demographic. It reaches a different group of people. And so, I mean, those are all things I enjoy doing. They're all things I enjoy talking about. And if people want to connect with me, my contact information is online. You'll find it.
And the last question is a question that I ask every guest that we have on, just because I think it's an interesting look into you as a person. What is the one quote that you live by on a daily basis?
Oh, man. Probably, you know what? One that comes to mind, because I feel like I've used it a lot. If you want to get something done, ask a busy person.
That's good. No, that's good, actually.
I feel like I keep myself pretty busy, but I'm also pretty good about getting stuff done whenever I need to. So whatever, another thing on the plate, that's fine. We'll get it done. It's all good.
And you do. That's the thing. You do get it done. I mean, people can go and check out your blog and your podcast. But yes, we thank you for coming on and everything that you do for the atheist community. Especially for me, like I kind of evolved out of watching you and Seth Andrews and those kind of things. So that was a big part of why I wanted to reach out to you. And I thank you for taking the time to come on, because I know you are busy. But
no, it's all good. That means a lot. I'm glad that stuff helps, and I'm glad you're doing what you're doing, and I enjoy doing it too. So hopefully everyone can keep up, and let me know if you have any questions. Good luck.
Absolutely will.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for coming on.
Thank you guys. I'll talk to you.
The friendly atheist.